Hi Harshita, welcome to this video podcast. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, so thank you so much for having me. And I am currently working as a product manager at PayPal under the collections and recoveries team. So prior to this, I have varied experiences across software engineering. I was working with ADP, that's a payroll processing company. So I worked across different teams related to client lifecycle management, client billing, and little on the time off management as well. Post that, I worked across a couple of startups. So I did some freelance with very college level startups. And thereafter, I joined a company called Harshitas, where I was working with the treasury team under the cash forecasting focus area. So thereafter, I got an opportunity to work with a startup called Your Story, and that is where I worked on the content management system for the company. And after that, I wanted to come back to fintech, and that's when PayPal happened. So currently, it's been over a year. I'm working on the same team.
Great, great. So tell me a little about technical product management and industry specific some matrices. How do you define success for a product?
Sure. Okay. So let me just give a brief about how the structure works, right? So in any given PM role, of course, this varies vastly with organizations, but it's just pertaining to my current experience. So we work with different stakeholders. We have a business slash strategy team that works under a different leadership. We have a product team, we have the engineers, and we have a business intelligence team. So business is where we kind of understand what the company is aiming for. Is might be high revenue, high payment margin, or whatnot, right? So we do get our business inputs from there. So as a technical product manager, the primary role is to convert those business requirements into technical requirements, and the engineering team is responsible for finally executing those requirements. So basically, this is a bridge between all the different stakeholders where you kind of understand what are we trying to build and why are we trying to build that, and then you simply just say that okay, this is what we are trying to implement and translate into very to the point actionable items that the engineers can code on to.
Some matrices maybe, and how do you define
So
successful product?
So successful product means successful business. So I'll go to like a smaller nuance first. So first of all is I think the primary goal is to achieve or build a product that we were aiming for since the beginning. So execution in that sense would be building a robust product that there is a product payload, there are service level agreements, there is a functional requirement that how many seconds it loads to build any screen. Then we come to the business requirements because the team I work for is an in-house back office team. So our goal is to make sure that we're optimizing the teammates. Teammates is basically the agents' time that use our product, use our tool, right? So then matrices are the average handling time, wherein we take into consideration how much how much time the agent has to spend on the customer calls. Then we also translate into enrollment programs. We do offer different programs under collections. So like that enrollment happens through the platform. So we take into account how that is happening. Then we do have our processes to call up the customers. So we try to optimize those instructions. And that is a different metric called RPC, that is the right party contact. So we try and understand on how these parameters are performing, how well are we doing in terms of the overall business goal. That is, of course, to collect on the money that goes delinquent. So yeah, I mean, these are the matrices we track. Of course, there are service level agreements and more technical nuances, which is a different topic altogether.
Got it, got it. So Harshita, tell me a little about your day at work. How does a day look like?
So my day at work, it's never the same to be honest. But I will tell you a typical, work week that happens. So in any given development cycle, that is a 4 month cycle that we follow here. We try and understand what are the business priorities or what are our goals for the next 4 months. So a typical day would be spent to meet the relevant stakeholders, try and gather as much input as I can to understand what is happening and what is not. Thereafter, then I like have my do not disturb sign on, and that is where we focus on understanding the requirements, translating into actionable items, and also there is a lot of to back and forth to understand why this is being implemented, or can we do something better, or what is the best way to implement that. So that is where we do our research, we study competitive products, we kind of understand in detail what the industry is doing altogether. And once we have clarity on that, then we go to our engineering partners, and then we have a back and forth discussion on what is implementable, what has to be discarded, what are the feasibility criterias. And then finally there is the documentation phase that I reserve my Fridays for. And then there is this entire documentation process that happens. There are other nuances such as program tracking and knowing where are we going with that. And yeah, this is what a typical work week would look like.
Oh, interesting. So, Harshita, I have this curiosity in my mind. Since you are a bridge between the business and the, let's say, engineering team, a lot of negotiations must be going on. So, how does the negotiation usually end? Is it always data driven, or is it a pilot project which shows that we should be going here, or is it some North Star thing? How does negotiations usually end?
That's a great question. And in my experience, that is the most difficult yet rewarding part of the job I do. So, see, the first thing is to be able to meet with business. And of course, like I have a knowledge on how the platform works, how things work, right? So, like with that kind of understanding, it's easier to negotiate with the business at a higher level so that it does not have to boil down. But other than that, like if you bring us in the room, like the end goal is to align on a decision, right? So when we have everyone in the room, it is data driven, where we we put in values that, okay, if let's say X million of dollars are at stake, then we have to do it, no matter how many engineering resources or how much cost optimization we have to do. If it has a huge value, of course it has to be done. If not, then I think this is something I've done in the past year also. We do a cost benefit analysis, we evaluate our options. If let's say something has to be done, can it there be a workaround it, or can we have a smaller solution to that, or can we outsource it or something like that. So at the end of the day, yes, it is a data driven decision, but at the same time it's not just the dollar value that we look into. We also do our cost benefit analysis, where we kind of put in like how much the engineering resources are going to cost us, or how much the operations resources are going to cost us, versus the return that we are trying to get out of it, as compared to what like any other company would give out that to us. So yes, the answer is yes, that there are data driven decisions.
Okay, okay, got it. Coming to a very classic problem in product management, build versus buy when it comes to software solutioning. What's your take on it, and would you want to explain that on a detailed level?
I mean, I can talk about my experience here. I mean, like, of course, I want to acknowledge the fact that it varies vastly across that. So, first, trying to understand the meaning of build versus buy, right? Build is a solution capability that you spend your, like, when I say your, the company's organizational resources to create that capability in house. And buy is something that there is a product available in the market, and you simply have to integrate it into your platform or your app or whatever you're working on. So when we are supposed to have a decision between build versus buy, the first and the foremost thing is that we need to understand that if the solution in consideration, if or not that is the bread and butter of the work system, if or not that is the core problem solving solution that we're talking about. If it is core to the business, then that means we would want to customize it. We would want to collect all the data in house. We would want to perform analytics on that. So it makes more sense to capture that entire data set in house. And of course, like since it's the bread and butter, you cannot rely on a third party, because what if the system goes down? You cannot just simply go about it. Whereas the buy capability comes into the picture when you need a supporting solution, when you want to kind of integrate something that is a part of the bigger picture, a part of the platform functioning, but not necessarily the bread and butter. So a very fair example would be payment gateways, right? Like in India, we use Razor Pay and Just Pay and everything. So what happens there is simply that if I have to create a website, the USP and the bread and butter of my website, like let's say it's an e-commerce website, so that is the product, right? I would spend a lot of time in building the UI or the product. But when a user has to pay, that is not the core functionality. It is basically a payment gateway through which the transaction happens. So that is where how we think about the build versus buy concept here.
So Harshita, like two examples come into my mind, and one is when Google was building its Google Drive back in the day. They had a dilemma between whether to take Oracle data centers, hire Oracle for it, or like build their own data centers. So eventually they went with their own data centers, or else the other company would have milled out a lot and it would have costed a lot. But at the same time, when we look at Apple, their core capabilities are marketing and innovation. Marketing, I think they outsource it. I mean, just two juxtaposing examples in my mind, but obviously, innovation, you cannot do that. Coming to my next question,
Hey,
yeah,
just on the last point, right? Google's tagline is organizing the world's information. So having their own data centers to organize the world's information is kind of aligning with their goal.
yes,
But
yes.
like two very contrasting yet very interesting examples.
Harshita, you must have seen a lot of product managers at PayPal. If you were to define few traits which you see as contributing factors to their success, what would they?
Okay, not just at PayPal, but everywhere. I think like keeping aside the skill set, assuming that everyone is equally skilled or everyone has the potential to gain that skill set, right? I honestly believe humility is the key. Always have that attitude that they want to kind of learn and grow, right? Keeping all the egos aside. So, coming to PayPal, like what I have seen that there are four different levels that we look at least like the team or the kind of mentors I work with, right? First is the execution. So execution is somewhere between, let's say, APM or PM, junior PM's level, right? So where you don't know about what is going on in the bigger picture, but your focus is to get things done. You have a set of problems, and you will get all the answers. You will deliver everything on time. You will track it effectively. So that is called the execution phase of it. Then when you move a little up on the ladder above, right, when it comes to product managers or somewhere in between SPMs and PMs, right, let's say PM. So that is where you kind of evaluate your impact, like what kind of impact are you creating in the bigger organization, what kind of metrics are you delivering, what kind of dollar values are you delivering, what kind of regulation and compliance projects are you taking into executions. And that is where the number game comes into the picture. That is the business benefits. Second, when you go on the level above, that is where your business acumen and your strategy acumen comes into the picture. This is basically, this role requires you to understand what the company goals are and how are you contributing to those company goals, and do you have that business acumen or the business sense to deliver those. So the company goal might be as simple as increasing the payment margins, but how do you that do you do that? Do you onboard more merchants? Do you give discounts or anything of that sort? So that is where your business acumen comes into the picture. Moving up, we have leadership roles where people enable their juniors to get onto a certain level and make sure that they utilize everyone's full potential to be able to deliver the solutions. So, in my understanding, these are the four stepping stones, or maybe the four milestones, I would say, which anyone should look at and evaluate where do they currently stand.
Got it, got it. Harshita, tell me a little about this distinction between working at a startup and working with a very big MNC in your mind. Should anyone who is aspiring for product management join a nascent startup? What's your take on it?
Okay. So having worked in both, like coming from a corporate to the startup world and then back to corporate, I think I can just share what all has happened. So my first job was in a like a very huge MNC. It's a Fortune 500 company, and we were made to sit, and at that time it was all in office, but prior to COVID and everything. So there you don't really have visibility on what the organization is doing. Someone is going to tell you that, okay, write these test cases. You will go and write these test cases. So there is no question about like what business is doing it. You are paid to do a small part, and you do that small part, and everyone does the same way. Every single person is responsible for a given program, or given product, or given website, or given, let's say, service altogether. So and the processes are in place, right? If you have to put a code into production, you have to test it out in 4 different environments, and you have to test it out in production. Your pull requests, they are supposed to be approved by 4 odd people in your company, right? There are standards that are to be followed. So I think in MNCs, while there are a lot of processes which is both good and bad, it's basically you kind of, you are put somewhere and you are doing something, so there is little visibility on what is happening around in the world. Then coming to the startup world, it's completely the opposite. You're working on something, and some other person is going to come and ask, okay, what is happening with this random ABC thing, or what do you think about that? So I think like startups do have that advantage, I would say, where you get a lot of visibility, you get a lot of not transparency, but you kind of broaden your horizon. But at the same time, there are certain lack of processes which you like if you've worked in corporate and then you come to the startup world, you will miss those processes, that okay, anyone is dumping any code to it, or like people are not following the standard guidelines that we are supposed to do. And even in product management roles, it's mostly like you have to randomly go and ask someone, okay, what happened to this, what happened to that? So there are no tools like in corporates we use Atlassian very widely. We have specific tools to track everything. In startup, it's just WhatsApp. You call on WhatsApp and kind of ask and understand what is happening around in the world. So yeah, the tools and processes is something that lacks in startups, but it's okay. It's just a different kind of an experience. Yeah, and with the PayPal experience, again, like there are processes, there are standards. You have to achieve those standards. There are quarterly goals, and every quarter you are expected to deliver something. So it kind of, you have to justify the money that you get. So I mean, it whatever floats your boat is something that I would say.
Very, very interesting pointers here. Coming to the last part, Harshita, what advice do you have for aspiring technical product managers who are going to watch this?
So to be honest, like the first thing I tell anyone is, please evaluate what are you looking for. Don't get into it just for the sake of getting into it. Like talk to people, understand their experiences, and kind of evaluate where do you sit, right? Would you want to follow processes? Would you want to translate business into technical, or would you want to be in a, let's say, high ownership role? So the first step is to evaluate yourself, that okay, you know where you stand, or what do you really want from your career. Second is like if once you've made up your mind that okay, technical product management is something that suits your, this is something you would want to do, then first is get your problem solving skills right. That is of utmost importance, because there is a lot of ambiguity where people will just come and say, okay, what is happening with this? Have that understanding, have the ability, or build that ability to break down a very ambiguous random problem into something that is actionable. So problem solving is one, and second is customer obsession. That is something that we even in the back office teams here, we understand our customers, we understand our users, right? Because at the end of the day, your customers or your users are the ones who are going to pay for your services, right? So it's very important to be able to kind of understand what is going on, or what is your audience really looking forward to. Then third is to have that market and the business understanding, right? Because in product management, it's very crucial to understand the industry that you are in. So do your homework and kind of understand, let's say, the financial or the healthcare industry, because it is going to come on handsy when you actually do your job. And last bit is to have a fair understanding of the system architectures. While it's not necessarily going to come into the bigger picture when you start doing your job, it's not like, at least in my day to day life, it's not something I do actively. But having an understanding on how APIs work, how databases work, or if you have to tell your architect what is needed, what is not needed, and defining those requirements, it really helps. So there are like different resources where you kind of understand the bigger picture, do break it down into smaller problems and solve piece by piece. So yeah, that's something I would tell the aspiring TPMs, that please understand if this is really for you. If it is, then have your problem solving skills enhanced.
Harshita, very interesting conversation. I feel and unique journey. MNC, then startup, then again MNC. I think viewers will obviously find value in this. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's interesting to kind of listen through your own journey like this on a platform like this. But yeah, thanks for having me.